The doors to the Grand Galactic Assembly Hall opened with a hiss that echoed through the massive chamber. Ambassador Minho Kang stepped inside, his black diplomatic uniform crisp and formal. Behind him walked Dr. Hannah Park, carrying a data tablet that held humanity's 50th petition for full membership. Captain Jinwoo Lee followed last, his eyes scanning the room with practiced military precision. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate species of all sizes and environmental needs. Floating platforms held representatives from across the galaxy. Some breathed methane through masks. Others existed as pure energy contained in crystalline vessels. The humans walked across the polished floor toward the center platform, their footsteps the only sound in the vast space. Council Prime Velthur sat on the highest platform. His species resembled birds, with golden feathers and sharp, intelligent eyes. He watched the humans approach with an expression that Minho had learned to recognize over 30 years of meetings. It was barely concealed contempt. Ambassador Kang, Velthur's voice resonated through translation devices embedded in every wall. You return once again. How ... Persistent you humans are. Minho stopped at the designated speaking circle. He had stood in this exact spot 50 times before. 50 times he had presented humanity's case. 50 times he had been denied. Council Prime, Minho said, his voice steady. Humanity submits its formal petition for full council membership. We have met every requirement set before us. Our technology is advanced. Our society is stable. We have maintained peace within our territories for 3 decades. We have contributed medical research, agricultural innovations, and defensive technologies to council members in need. Hannah stepped forward and transmitted their documentation to the council's central database. Charts and graphs appeared on holographic displays throughout the chamber. They showed human achievements in detail: disease eradication, faster-than-light travel improvements, terraforming techniques, food production increases that had helped feed 4 council species during famine. Councillor Thex rose from his platform. His reptilian species was known for their military strength and aggressive politics. The council has reviewed your petition, he said, his scaled face twisting into what might have been a smile. We have concerns. What concerns? Minho asked, though he already knew this script by heart. Your violent nature, Dex said. He gestured, and new images replaced the human achievements. They showed human conflicts, wars from Earth's history, military operations, police actions. Every image was carefully selected to make humanity look brutal and savage. You are a warrior species, dangerous, unpredictable. Those images are from our past, Hannah spoke up, unable to contain herself. Some are over 300 years old. Humanity has evolved beyond. Silence, Velthur said sharply. The council is speaking. Minho placed a gentle hand on Hannah's arm. She fell silent, but her jaw was tight with anger. Councillor Alara's platform drifted forward. She was a crystalline being, ancient beyond human comprehension. Her species had existed for millions of years. Your achievements, as you call them, her voice chimed like breaking glass, are merely borrowed technologies. Lucky discoveries. Your species has existed for what? 200,000 years? You are infants, mayflies. You live barely a century and think you understand the galaxy. Laughter rippled through some of the council members. Not all of them, Minho noticed. Some looked uncomfortable, but they said nothing. We do not claim to know everything, Minho said carefully. That is why we seek membership. To learn, to contribute, to stand as equals among the stars. Equals? Dex's laugh was a harsh bark. You presume too much, human. Velthur raised a wing for silence. The council has reached a decision regarding your petition. He paused, letting the moment stretch. We find that humanity remains unready for full membership. Your probationary status is extended for another 50 years. Minho felt Jingwu tense behind him. Hana's breathing quickened, but Minho himself remained perfectly still. He had expected this. What came next, however, he had not anticipated. Furthermore, Valther continued, the Council has growing concerns about human FTL technology. Your quantum drive systems are ... unstable, potentially dangerous to the fabric of spacetime. For the safety of all galactic civilizations, we require that humanity surrender the core schematics of your FTL drives to Council oversight. You will be provided with standard Council drive technology as a replacement. The chamber went silent. Even the species who had been laughing moments before seemed shocked. You want us to give you our technology, Minho said slowly, and accept inferior drives that will make human vessels slower than any other species in Council space. For safety, Valther repeated. For control, Hana whispered. My NHO understood then. He finally understood what 30 years of denial had really meant. Humanity had never been unready. They had been too ready, too innovative, too independent. The Council did not want members who might challenge their authority. They wanted subjects who needed them. He looked around the chamber, at Valther's smug expression, at Thex's barely concealed greed, at Illyra's ancient indifference, at the dozens of other species who watched in silence, too afraid or too comfortable to object. Something inside Minho broke, not in anger, but in clarity. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small data chip. It contained humanity's formal application, certified by Earth's government and every human colony. 30 years of work, 50 petitions, countless hours of negotiation and compromise and pleading. Minho looked at the chip for a long moment. Then he bent down and placed it carefully on the floor. The small object looked tiny and insignificant in the enormous chamber. No, he said simply. Valther blinked. Excuse me? No, Minho repeated. He stood up straight. Humanity withdraws its petition for Council membership. Effective immediately. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Valther's feathers ruffled in surprise. You cannot simply, we can, Minho said. His voice was not loud, but somehow it carried through the chaos. We came to you as supplicants, Council Prime. We sought your approval, your acceptance, your permission to stand among you. We were wrong to do so. He turned to face Hana and Jinwu. They stared at him with wide eyes. We leave as sovereigns, Minho said to them. Understanding dawned on their faces. Hana straightened her shoulders. Jingwu's hand moved to his side in a formal military stance. The three humans turned as one and walked toward the massive doors. Their footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Behind them, Council members shouted questions, demands, threats. Valther's voice rose above the rest, commanding them to stop, to return, to reconsider. Minho did not look back. Neither did Hana or Jinwu. They reached the doors, and the sensors opened them automatically. Bright light flooded in from the corridor beyond. They stepped through, and the doors sealed behind them with a final, definitive boom that resonated through the assembly hall like a death knell in the silence that followed. Valther stared at the closed doors. For the first time in his 200 years of service, he felt something he had never associated with humanity before. He felt afraid. Admiral Soman Choi stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Indomitable, watching the star charts with intense focus. Around her, dozens of officers worked at their stations, coordinating the largest military movement in human history. Every human ship, from massive carriers to small research vessels, was moving at once. Admiral, the colony fleet at Kepler 442 reports they are underway, an officer reported. Estimated departure from the system in 6 hours. Acknowledged, Soman said. She marked another location on her tactical display. Green dots represented human assets. They were all moving away from Council space, converging on predetermined coordinates beyond the galactic rim. On Earth, Director Yuna Song sat in a dark room surrounded by intelligence screens. Her team had been working without sleep for 24 hours since Ambassador Kang's dramatic exit from the assembly. The information they were uncovering made her blood run cold. Director, we've cracked another encrypted Council database, her assistant said. You need to see this. Yuna walked over to his station. The screen showed classified Council documents dating back 60 years. She read quickly, her trained eyes pulling out the relevant details. Then she read again, slower, hoping she had misunderstood. She had not. Get me a secure channel to Ambassador Kang, she said quietly. Immediately. On Station Kepler 9, the same station that housed the assembly hall, chaos was spreading. Velther sat in his private office, staring at reports that made no sense. Human trade ships were refusing to dock. Human merchants were canceling contracts, returning advance payments, and apologizing politely before cutting all communication. It has been 12 hours, Velther said to his assistant. This is clearly a negotiation tactic. The humans are trying to pressure us into reconsidering. His assistant, a young member of his own species, looked uncertain. Council Prime, perhaps we should reach out to them. The economic impact is minimal, Velther interrupted. Humanity represents barely 3% of Council trade. They need us far more than we need them. The assistant said nothing, but his eyes showed doubt. 3 systems away, Dr. Hannah Park stood in a laboratory aboard a human research station. Around her, scientists were packing equipment with military efficiency. Everything was being cataloged, secured, and prepared for transport. Dr. Park, one of her researchers, called out, "The Council medical facilities are requesting our vaccine shipments. The Lorathan flu season is starting, and they don't have enough supplies." Hannah felt a pang of guilt. She had helped develop that vaccine. She knew the Lorathan people would suffer without it. But she also knew that the Council had been planning to steal the vaccine formula and produce it themselves, cutting humanity out of any credit or profit. "Send them our regrets," she said. "All human medical shipments are suspended pending review of trade agreements." "They won't have enough," the researcher said quietly. "No," Hannah agreed. "They won't." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Soman received a priority message. She read it 3 times, then called for her chief engineer. "Commander, how many junk gates in Council space rely on human maintenance?" She asked. The engineer pulled up a schematic. 47%, Admiral. We designed most of the quantum stabilization systems. The Council species couldn't get them to work reliably, so they contracted the work to human firms. "Shut them down," Soman ordered. "All of them. Implement the automated withdrawal protocols." The engineer's eyes widened. "Admiral, that will cripple their trade routes. Some systems will be isolated for months until they can repair. That is not our concern anymore," Soman said. "Execute the order." Across Council space, junk gates began powering down. The massive structures that allowed instant travel between stars went dark one by one. Human technicians left their posts, ordering the last human ships departing each system. They left detailed manuals and diagnostic tools behind. But the technology was complex, and it would take the Council months to train their own people to maintain it properly. In the assembly hall, an emergency session was called. Councillor Thex stood before the gathered representatives, his expression grave. "The humans have closed their borders," he announced. "All human ships have withdrawn from Council space. They are refusing all communication. Furthermore, They have sabotaged critical infrastructure. They did not sabotage anything, a small voice interrupted. It came from Counselor Kale, a young representative from a minor species. They simply stopped maintaining systems that we relied on them to manage. Systems that we could not manage ourselves. Vex glared at him. Semantics. Truth, Kale replied calmly. We have been using human technology, human expertise, and human resources while treating them as inferiors. Now they have removed themselves from the equation, and we are discovering how dependent we had become. Velther entered the chamber, looking tired. The situation is under control, he announced, though his voice lacked confidence. This is simply a tantrum. Humanity will realize they cannot survive without Council support and will return to negotiations within a month. Ilara's crystalline platform floated forward. I have lived through the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations, she said. I have seen this pattern before. When a species withdraws this completely, this efficiently, this quickly, they are not throwing a tantrum. They are preparing. Preparing for what? Vex demanded. That, Ilara said, is what concerns me. Director Unisong finally reached Minho Kong through a secure quantum channel. His image appeared on her screen, transmitted from a human ship somewhere in deep space. Director Song, Minho said. What have you found? Everything, Una replied. She transmitted her files to him. The Council has known about humanity's probationary status from the beginning. It was never about whether we were ready. They were afraid of us. Minho scrolled through the documents, his face darkening. They've been deliberately holding us back. Worse than that, Una said. Look at document 3347B. It's a Council military intelligence report from 20 years ago. They analyzed human innovation rates, our technological advancement, our problem-solving capabilities. Their conclusion was that if humanity gained full Council membership and access to all Council resources, we would surpass every Council species within 50 years. Minho leaned back in his chair. They were afraid we would replace them. Not replace, Una corrected. Lead. The report specifically warns that humanity's diplomatic approach, combined with our technological progress, would result in other species gravitating toward human alliance rather than Council authority. They were afraid of becoming irrelevant. So they kept us as probationary members, Minho said. Forever asking permission, forever dependent on their approval. Exactly, Una confirmed. And look at this last document. It's dated 3 months ago. Vex's Military Intelligence Division was preparing a plan to seize human FTL technology by force if humanity ever refused to hand it over voluntarily. Minho's jaw clenched. They were going to invade us. They were going to try, Una said. The report concluded they would need overwhelming force and complete surprise. Otherwise, human defensive capabilities would make it too costly. There was a long silence. Then Minho spoke, his voice cold. We made the right choice walking away. Yes, Una agreed. But sir, there's one more thing. I found references to something called Operation Harvest. It's buried deep in classified files, and I can only access fragments. But from what I can piece together, the Council has been hiding something. Something big. Something dangerous. Can you crack it? Minho asked. Given time, Una said. But the encryption is military grade. It might take months. You have months, Minho told her. We're not going back. Back in the assembly hall, Velther sat alone after the emergency session ended. He had sent 3 diplomatic messages to humanity. All had been ignored. He had authorized Council ships to approach human borders to request negotiations. Those ships had been turned away by automated defense platforms that appeared seemingly overnight. For 30 years, he had looked down on humanity. He had dismissed their achievements, delayed their membership, and treated them as children begging for adult approval. Now those children were gone, and for the first time, Velther wondered if humanity had ever needed the Council at all. Perhaps it had been the other way around. 3 months had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Assembly. President Haijin Nam stood in her office on Earth, looking at reports from across human space. The numbers were better than anyone had dared to hope. Production is up 18%, her economic advisor said. Without Council trade restrictions, our manufacturers can operate at full capacity. We're building faster, innovating faster, growing faster. What about morale? Haijin asked. The highest it's been in decades, the advisor replied. People feel liberated, like we've finally been allowed to reach our potential. Haijin nodded slowly. She had made the decision to support Ambassador Kang's withdrawal. It had been a gamble, but the gamble was paying off. In deep space, far beyond any mapped territory, Taiyang Park stood in front of a massive construct. It was a ship, but unlike any ship ever built. The hull was smooth and dark, covered in quantum field generators that bent light around it. Inside, the new slipstream drive hummed with barely contained power. Run the test, Taiyang ordered. His engineering team initiated the drive. The ship didn't jump to faster-than-light speed in the traditional way. It slipped sideways through spacetime itself, existing in multiple locations simultaneously before resolving at its destination. The test target was 3 light-years away. The ship arrived in 4 seconds. Taiyang's team stared at their instruments in stunned silence. Council FTL technology would have taken 3 hours to cover the same distance. Human ships had just become 700 times faster. Build 50 more, Taiyang said calmly, though his hands were shaking with excitement. We're going to need them. On Station Kepler 9, Velther faced the Council in crisis. The emergency session had lasted 6 hours, and tempers were running high. 3 species are requesting emergency food aid, Councillor Kale reported. Human agricultural exports were keeping them fed. Their own farming infrastructure can't meet demand. Then they should improve their infrastructure, Bex snarled. With what resources? Kale shot back. Half our economy ran on human trade. We imported their food, their medicine, their technology. We used their maintenance services, their research, their expertise. And we gave them nothing but contempt in return. They were probationary members, Velther said. They received the honor of our association. Our association is starving 3 worlds, Kale said quietly. Alera's platform drifted forward. I have been monitoring the human border, she said. Something is happening there. Something we do not understand. What do you mean? Velther asked. Their sensor jamming has become absolute, Ilara explained. No council ship can penetrate it. No probe can gather data. It is as if human space has become a black hole of information. But there is energy activity. Massive energy activity. Construction on a scale I have never witnessed. They're building weapons, Vex said immediately. We should strike now, before they become a threat. They are already a threat, Ilara corrected. The question is what kind of threat? Vex stood. I'd propose we send a military fleet to investigate human activities. If they refuse to allow inspection, we take action. The vote was close, but it passed. Vex smiled. Captain Jinwoo Lee commanded the Human Border Patrol from a refitted destroyer. His sensors picked up the Council military fleet while it was still 2 days away. 30 ships, heavily armed, moving in formation toward human space. Orders, Captain? His tactical officer asked. Let them come, Jinwoo said. Activate protocol silence. When the Council fleet reached the human border, they found nothing. No ships, no stations, no defenses. Just empty space. Encouraged, they pushed forward, crossing into what had been human territory. The fleet's sensors went dead. Navigation systems failed. Communications stopped working. The ships drifted, blind and deaf, unable to even see each other. Crews panicked. Captains ordered retreat, but without navigation, they couldn't tell which direction to go. 3 days later, the ships reappeared at the border, right where they had entered. Every system was restored. The crews were unharmed. But every weapon had been disabled, every computer core wiped clean, and every captain found a message on their personal terminal. You are not welcome here. Do not return. No signature. No explanation. Just the message and the impossible fact that 30 military vessels had been completely neutralized without. A single shot fired. Dr. Hannah Park worked in a new laboratory on a moon, orbiting a gas giant in human space. Her team had made a breakthrough that should have been impossible. The terraforming process that normally took centuries could now be completed in months. The quantum biological accelerators are working beyond expectations, her lead researcher said. We can seed an entire planet with engineered bacteria that convert the atmosphere in weeks instead of decades. How many planets can we terraform simultaneously? Hannah asked. With current resources? 20. With the new industrial output from Taiyang's shipyards? Maybe 50. Hannah thought about the implications. Humanity could colonize the galaxy at a rate that would make the Council's expansion look like a crawl. They wouldn't need to beg for permission to settle contested worlds. They would simply move beyond Council space entirely and create their own worlds. Start with the 20, she ordered. We'll need the space. Ambassador Narration, who had served as the human liaison to the Council for a decade before the withdrawal, now advised the isolation policy. She sat in a meeting with President Haijin and the military leadership. The Council has attempted contact 407 times, Nari reported. Every method of communication has been tried. Official diplomatic channels, back-channel intermediaries, even personal messages to individuals the Council thinks we might trust. Response? Haijin asked. None, Nari confirmed. Complete silence. As ordered. They must be getting desperate, Admiral Soman said. They are, Nari agreed. But desperation makes them dangerous. Dex's faction is growing more influential. They believe military action is the answer. Let them try, Admiral Soman said. We've already demonstrated what happens when their ships enter our space. Speaking of which, Jinwoo added, we've detected 3 more probes attempting to penetrate our sensor barrier. All were disabled and returned to their point of origin. President Haijin stood and walked to the window. Outside, Earth looked peaceful and blue. But beyond that single world, humanity was transforming itself at a pace that would have been impossible under Council oversight. How long can we maintain this silence? She asked. As long as necessary, Nari said. But Madam President, we should discuss what comes next. We cannot remain isolated forever. Eventually, we will need to engage with galactic civilization again. On our terms, Haijin said firmly. Not as supplicants. Not as probationary members. As equals. Will the Council ever see us that way? Nari asked. They will, Haijin said. Because we will give them no other choice. Deep in Council intelligence networks, Director Unisong finally cracked the encryption on Operation Harvest. What she found made her immediately request an emergency meeting with President Haijin and the entire military command. The meeting was called for the next day. Yuna prepared her report, her hands shaking as she compiled the evidence. The Council had been lying for centuries. And the lie was so massive, so terrible, that it changed everything. On Station Kepler 9. Velther received the report of his military fleet's humiliating defeat. 30 ships disabled without violence. Returned like children sent home after curfew. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer the weak species begging for acceptance. They had become something else, something powerful, something the Council did not understand. Ilara found Velther in his office late that night. The ancient being looked at the former Council Prime with her crystalline eyes. "You should have accepted them when you had the chance," she said. "They were not ready." Velther protested weakly. "No," Ilara corrected. "We were not ready for them. We saw their youth and assumed weakness. We saw their kindness and assumed naivety. We saw their desire to join us and assumed dependence. We were wrong about everything. What do we do now?" Velther asked. "We wait," Ilara said. "And we hope that when humanity finally decides to speak to us again, they are still willing to be merciful." In human space, President Haijin read Director Yuna's report. Then she read it again. Her face went pale. "When were you going to tell them?" she asked quietly. "Tell who, Madam President?" "The Council," Haijin said. "When were the Council planning to tell the younger species that they were being bred as livestock for an ancient enemy?" Yuna's silence was answer enough. Haijin looked at the star charts on her wall. Somewhere out there, beyond known space, something was coming. Something that had harvested civilizations for millennia. And the Galactic Council had known about it the entire time. "Get me Ambassador Kong," Haijin ordered. "We need to decide whether to save the people who are willing to sacrifice us." Captain Sung Ho Kwan guided his exploration vessel through an uncharted region of space. His mission was simple: map new territories for human colonization. What he found instead would change everything. "Captain, I'm picking up artificial structures ahead," his sensor officer reported. "They're old. Really old." Sung Ho moved to the sensor display. The structures were massive, floating in the void between stars. They had been dead for thousands of years, but their design was unmistakable. Someone had built them. Someone advanced. "Take us in slowly," Sung Ho ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know everything about these structures before we get close." Dr. Minji Bei, the ship's xenerarchaeologist, was called to the bridge. When she saw the structures, her eyes widened. "Those architectural patterns," she whispered. "I've seen them before in Council historical databases. These might be from one of the founding races." "I thought the Council founding races were still around," Sung Ho said. "Most of them," Minji confirmed. "But there were others. Races that vanished mysteriously. The Council doesn't talk about them much." The exploration team boarded the largest structure wearing environmental suits. Inside, they found vast chambers filled with dormant computer systems. Minji connected a portable power supply to one terminal, and to everyone's surprise, it activated. "The system is coming online," she said, her voice excited. "It's translating itself into multiple languages. Whoever built this wanted to make sure any species could read it." Text appeared on screens throughout the chamber. Minji read aloud, her voice growing quieter with each sentence. "Warning to all biological civilizations. The Devourers come from dark space. They harvest sentient life. They operate on cycles measured in millennia. We tried to fight. We failed. They are patient. They are thorough. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be stopped. They will return. Beware the message ended abruptly, as if the writer had been interrupted. "Captain," the sensor officer called out, "I'm finding more structures. Hundreds of them, all containing similar warnings." Sung Ho felt ice in his stomach. "Send all this data to Earth immediately. Priority Alpha. And find me everything these structures contain about these Devourers." It took 3 days to download the ancient databases. What they revealed was terrifying. The Devourers were a machine intelligence that had been harvesting biological civilizations for millions of years. They arrived, consumed everything useful, and left the worlds empty. Then they vanished into dark space for 10,000 years before returning. The last harvest had been 9,980 years ago. On Station Kepler 9, Counselor Kale worked late in his office. He was young for a council member, and his species was considered minor and unimportant. But Kale believed in truth, and what he had discovered made him sick with horror. He had spent months accessing old council archives, piecing together fragments of information that had been deliberately scattered and hidden. Now he understood why the council's founding races had known about the Devourers. They had survived the last harvest by sacrificing younger civilizations. They had hidden, let others be consumed, and emerged after the Devourers left. Then they had formed the Galactic Council, supposedly to unite species for mutual defense. But that was a lie. The Council's real purpose was to identify which species would be sacrificed in the next harvest. They kept detailed records of population centers, military capabilities, and technological levels, not to defend those species, to offer them up when the Devourers returned. Kale found the current harvest plan buried in military intelligence files. It was dated 8 months ago, before humanity's withdrawal. According to the plan, humanity was designated as the primary sacrifice. Human worlds would be defended just long enough to evacuate council leadership and essential personnel. Then human space would be abandoned to the Devourers, while the council retreated to prepared safe zones. The probationary status suddenly made sense. Keep humanity dependent. Keep them weak. Keep them from having the resources to escape when the time came. Kale stared at the files for a long time. Then he made a decision that would brand him a traitor to the council. He copied everything and prepared to transmit it. But to whom? Humanity had cut all contact. He had no way to reach them. Then Kale remembered something. Humans had left communication protocols in place for true emergencies. Medical crises, natural disasters, things that transcended politics. He coded his transmission as a humanitarian emergency and sent it into the void toward human space. He didn't know if anyone would receive it, but he had to try. In human space, the transmission was received by a border monitoring station. The operator almost deleted it as another council attempt at contact. But the emergency coding made her pause. She opened it, read the first few lines, and immediately forwarded it to Director Yuna Song. Yuna read Kale's transmission alongside the data from Captain Seung Ho's discovery. The pieces fit together perfectly. Ancient warnings about the Devourers. Council plans to sacrifice humanity. The timing of the next harvest cycle. She called an emergency meeting with President Hai Jin and the military leadership. When everyone was assembled, she displayed both sets of information on the main screen. The Council has known about an existential threat for thousands of years, Yuna said, and their strategy is to feed younger species to it like sheep to wolves. How long do we have? Admiral Somin asked. According to the ancient warnings, the Devourers return every 10,000 years, Yuna replied. The last harvest was 9,980 years ago. We have approximately 20 years. 20 years, President Haijin repeated. And the Council was planning to sacrifice us. Not just planning, Yuna corrected. The invasion, order for human technology, the forced confiscation of our FTL drives, it was all preparation. They wanted us weak and trapped when the Devourers arrived. Ambassador Minho Kong, attending via video link, spoke for the first time. And when we walked out of the assembly, we disrupted their entire plan. Yes, Yuna confirmed. Which is why Vex has been so aggressive about trying to force us back under Council control. Without humanity as the designated sacrifice, the Council will have to face the Devourers themselves. Good, Minho said coldly. Let them. Sir? Hana Park protested. She had been listening quietly until now. We're talking about billions of lives. Entire civilizations. Yes, the council leadership is corrupt, but the people who laughed when we were insulted? Minho interrupted. The people who sat silent while we were denied basic respect for 30 years. Not all of them, Hana insisted. This Counselor Kale risked everything to warn us. And there must be others like him. People who didn't know about the conspiracy. The room fell silent. President Haijin looked at each person in turn. What are our capabilities? She asked finally. Can we fight the Devourers? Admiral Soman pulled up tactical displays. Our new slipstream drives give us mobility they won't expect. Our weapons technology has advanced significantly. Taiyang's quantum disruption systems show promise in simulations. Simulations are not battles, Minho warned. No, Soman agreed. But we have something the Council doesn't. We have 20 years to prepare, and we're not wasting time on politics and bureaucracy. Taiyang spoke up from his shipyard. If the ancient warnings are accurate, the Devourers are vulnerable to quantum destabilization. Their machine intelligence relies on entangled processors spread across their fleet. If we can disrupt that entanglement, we can break their coordination, Admiral Soman finished. Potentially even shut them down. Potentially, Haijin emphasized. But we don't know for certain. We've never faced anything like this. Neither has the Council, Yuna added. Their strategy has always been to hide and sacrifice others. They have no experience actually fighting the Devourers. Captain Jinwoo. Lee, commanding the border forces, received an urgent alert. Madam President, we have a situation. A single small vessel has crossed our border. It's transmitting Council diplomatic codes, but it's not a military ship. Identify, Haijin ordered. The ship is registered to Counselor Kale, Jinwoo reported. He's alone. No weapons, no escort. And he's broadcasting a message on repeat. I have information vital to survival. Please respond. Everyone looked at the president. Haijin made her decision quickly. Bring him in, she said. Under guard. If this is genuine, we need to hear what he has to say. 2 hours later, Kale stood in a conference room surrounded by human leadership. He looked exhausted and afraid, but his voice was steady as he presented everything he had discovered. I cannot undo what the Council planned, Kale said when he finished, but I can help you prepare. I know their defensive systems, their military capabilities, their evacuation plans, and I can help you save the people who don't deserve to die for their leader's cowardice. Why? Minho asked. Why betray your own people? Because they stopped being my people the moment I learned they were planning mass murder, Kale replied. I took an oath to protect civilization, not participate in its destruction. Haijin studied the young counselor. If we fight the Devourers, we'll be protecting the same council that tried to sacrifice us. I know, Kale said, and I have no right to ask this of you. But there are billions of innocent people in council space who have no idea what their government planned. They don't deserve to die. No, Hana said softly. They don't. The room was silent for a long moment. Then President Haijin spoke. We have 20 years to prepare, she said. We're going to spend every moment of that time building the most powerful defensive fleet this galaxy has ever seen. And when the Devourers come, we'll be ready. And the Council? Minho asked. Haijin's expression was hard. We'll save them. Not because they deserve it, but because someone has to be better than they are. And that someone is us. The warning came. 19 years and 11 months after humanity discovered the truth about the Devourers. Captain Sung-Ho Kwan's Deep Space Monitoring Station detected the anomaly first. Contact, he reported, his voice tight with tension. Multiple gravity wells forming at the edge of the galaxy. Thousands of them. They're early. Fleet Admiral Minho. Kang stood on the bridge of the new flagship Sovereign, humanity's most advanced warship. Around him, hundreds of vessels moved into defensive positions. 20 years of preparation had transformed humanity's military into something the galaxy had never seen. All units, battle stations, Minho ordered. This is not a drill. The Devourers have arrived. The enemy fleet emerged from dark space like a wound in reality. Their ships were massive and alien, built with technology that predated most galactic civilizations. They moved with terrible purpose toward the nearest inhabited worlds. Council space erupted in panic. On Station Kepler 9, what remained of the Galactic Council scrambled to implement their evacuation plans. But those plans had been written assuming humanity would be the sacrifice. Without human worlds to delay the enemy, the Devourers were heading straight for the Council's core systems. Velthar, no longer Council Prime but still influential, watched the tactical displays with growing horror. How did they arrive so soon? We were supposed to have months of warning. The calculations were wrong, Ilara said quietly. Or perhaps the Devourers simply don't follow our understanding of time. It doesn't matter now. Counselor Thex burst into the command center. We need to surrender human territory to them. Tell the Devourers where to find human worlds. It might buy us time. Human territory is beyond our borders, Velthar said. We have no way to reach them. You made certain of that when you tried to invade their space. Then we're dead, Vex said flatly. A Council defense fleet moved to intercept the Devourers at the border of the Salic system. 60 warships, representing the combined military might of a dozen species. They opened fire with every weapon they possessed. The Devourers barely slowed. Their shields absorbed the attacks effortlessly. Return fire cut through the Council ships like paper. Within minutes, the entire fleet was destroyed. The Devourers continued toward the populated worlds. Billions of people began evacuating, but there was nowhere to go. The enemy was everywhere, moving through Council space like a plague. On the Sovereign, Admiral Somin Choi monitored the battle reports. The Council fleets are being destroyed faster than predicted. Their weapons are completely ineffective. What about the civilian evacuations? President Haijin asked from Earth. They have maybe 6 hours before the Devourers reach the core worlds, Somin reported. The Council's evacuation plan is failing. Too many people, not enough ships. Dr. Hannah Park spoke from the Medical Command Center. If we don't intervene, we're looking at casualties in the hundreds of billions. The command channel fell silent. Everyone knew what had to be decided. Humanity could remain safe in their own space, protected by borders the Devourers hadn't reached yet. Or they could risk everything for people who had been willing to sacrifice them. Captain Jinwoo Lee, commanding a battle group at the human border, broke the silence. Orders, Admiral? Minho looked at President Haijin's image on the screen. She met his eyes across the light years between them. Then she nodded once. All units, Minho said clearly. Cross the border. Engage the Devourers. Protect the Council worlds. 300 human warships, each equipped with technology 20 years more advanced than anything the Council possessed, burst from their defensive positions. They moved at speeds that made Council FTL look like a crawl, crossing vast distances in moments. The first Devourer fleet was attacking a world called Talax Prime. 3 billion inhabitants were trapped as the enemy ships descended. Council defenders died trying to hold the line. Then humanity arrived. The human ships didn't announce themselves. They simply appeared, materializing from slipstream jumps directly into optimal firing positions. Taiyan Park's quantum disruption weapons activated. Invisible pulses of energy that tore at the fabric of reality itself. The Devourer ships, which had shrugged off Council weapons without effort, suddenly shuddered. Their coordinated movements became erratic. Ships collided with each other. Their shields flickered and failed. The quantum disruption is working, Taiyang reported from the Sovereign. Their networked intelligence is losing cohesion. They can't communicate with each other. Captain Jingwu's battle group pressed the attack. Human missiles, guided by a far more sophisticated than the Council had ever seen, found weak points in the Devourer armor. Explosions blossomed across the enemy fleet. For the first time in recorded history, the Devourers were taking damage. Real damage. On Talax Prime, people looked up to see human ships fighting above their world. Ships from the species the Council had treated as inferiors. Ships that were winning. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Devourer fleet was destroyed. Not disabled. Not retreating. Destroyed. Debris floated in orbit around Talax Prime, the remains of enemies that had seemed invincible, but there was no time to celebrate. Dozens of other systems were under attack. Minho split his fleet, sending battle groups to every threatened world. Human ships appeared across Council space like avenging angels dot at the Battle of Kepler Station. Admiral Somin herself led the defense. Her tactical brilliance, combined with humanity's technological superiority, turned what should have been a massacre into a rout. The Devourers learned that day that machine intelligence, no matter how ancient, was no match for human creativity and determination dot in the Council chambers. Velthur watched the tactical displays with tears streaming down his face. Human ships were saving worlds the Council had already abandoned as lost. They were protecting people who had shown them nothing but contempt. Why? He whispered. Why are they saving us? Kale, who had spent the last 20 years helping humanity prepare for this moment, heard the question. Because they're better than we are, he said simply. The Battle of the Core Worlds was the largest engagement. A massive Devourer fleet, hundreds of vessels strong, converged on the most populated region of Council space. It was clearly meant to be a killing blow, the complete harvest of multiple civilizations at once. Fleet Admiral Minho Kung took personal command. He coordinated 300 human ships in a battle that would be studied for generations. Human vessels moved like dancers, appearing and disappearing through slipstream jumps. Always where the enemy didn't expect, Dr. Hannah Park's medical teams worked, frantically to evacuate wounded from damaged Council ships. Human medical technology, so far advanced beyond Council capabilities, saved thousands of lives that would have been lost. Taiyang Park pushed his quantum disruption systems to maximum output. The Devourer fleet, designed to work as a single unified mind, began to fragment. Individual ships became confused, attacking each other, unable to coordinate dot. And then, for the first time, the Devourers retreated. Not destroyed, but driven back. They regrouped at the edge of Council space, analyzing this unexpected resistance. But humanity didn't give them time to adapt. Minho pressed the attack, chasing the enemy fleet across 3 systems. Every battle ended the same way. Human technology and tactics proving superior. The Devourers taking losses they had never experienced before. After 6 days of continuous combat, the last Devourer ship was destroyed. The ancient enemy that had harvested civilizations for millions of years had been defeated. Not by hiding, not by sacrifice, but by standing and fighting. When it was over, Minho stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, exhausted but alive. Around him, his crew worked to coordinate recovery operations across Council space. Human ships were everywhere, helping with repairs, providing medical aid, assisting with reconstruction. A message came through on the diplomatic channel. It was Velthur, his voice broken. Ambassador Kang, he said, I request permission to speak with you. Admiral Kang now, Minho corrected. But yes, I'll hear you. Velthur appeared on the screen. He looked 100 years older than when Minho had last seen him. We were going to sacrifice you, he said. We knew the Devourers were coming, and we were going to let them have humanity while we hid. And you knew. You must have known. Yet you saved us anyway. We did, Minho confirmed. Why? Minho was quiet for a moment. Because someone had to prove that strength doesn't require cruelty. That power doesn't mean domination. The Council taught us what not to be. We chose to become something better. What happens now? Velther asked. Now? Minho said. Now we rebuild. But not under the old Council. That system was corrupt, and it dies here. We create something new. A true federation where all species stand as equals. Where decisions are made by merit, not by age or political maneuvering. Where younger races aren't kept dependent, but are encouraged to reach their potential. And humanity leads this federation? Velther asked. Humanity leads the military, Minho said firmly. That's non-negotiable. We proved we can fight and win. We proved we can protect. But governance? That's shared. Every species gets a voice. Every species gets a vote. Including yours. Velther bowed his head. We don't deserve this mercy. No, Minho agreed. You don't. But we're not doing this for you. We're doing it because it's right. 3 months after the war ended, a ceremony was held on Earth. Representatives from every species in the former Council territory gathered. They signed the Federation Charter, a document written with input from hundreds of worlds. Kale represented his people, the only Council member who had stood with humanity when it mattered. He gave a speech that would be remembered for centuries. Humanity was treated as children, he said. They were dismissed, belittled, and betrayed. They had every reason to abandon us. Every reason to let us face the consequences of our leaders' cowardice. Instead, they saved us. They fought for us. They died for us. And in doing so, they showed us what true strength looks like. Not the strength to dominate, but the strength to protect. Not the strength to demand submission, but the strength to stand as equals with anyone. President Haijin spoke last. The old Galactic Council failed because it was built on fear and control. This federation succeeds because it's built on respect and cooperation. We move forward together as equals, or we don't move forward at all. The Federation Charter was signed. Humanity became the military protectors of galactic civilization. But they also became teachers, sharing their technology freely, helping other species advance. The rapid innovation that had made the Council fear humanity now lifted all. Civilizations to New Heights. Minho stood at a memorial site a year after the war ended. It honored the 3,000 human soldiers who had died defending Council worlds. Worlds that had never shown humanity any kindness. Hana found him there. Do you think they understand now? She asked. Do they see us differently? Some do, Minho said. Some never will. But it doesn't matter what they think of us. We know who we are. And who are we? Hannah asked. Minho smiled. We're the species that walked away from masters and returned as guardians. We're the people who chose to be better. That's enough. They stood together in silence, watching the sun set over Earth, across the galaxy. Human ships patrolled borders. Human doctors healed the sick. Human engineers taught others their innovations. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as protectors. Humanity had stormed out of the Galactic Assembly in anger. They returned in strength, and the galaxy would never be the same.